Ever heard the phrase, "It's about the journey, not the destination"? Certain video games must agree, as while you'll have a ton of fun playing them, beating them is virtually impossible. Check out these 5 classic games whose endings almost no one has ever seen. Remember when Neil Young sang about how it's better to burn out than to fade away? He was talking about Johnny Rotten, but the same sentiment can be applied to Flappy Bird. This highly addictive game showed up, exploded in popularity, then disappeared in the blink of an eye. In early 2013, a game designer named Dong Nguyen created Flappy Bird as a response to what he saw as games growing overly complicated and needlessly flashy. He felt simple, colorful games that were nevertheless insanely hard to beat were the way to go, and Flappy Bird was exactly that. Anyone can figure out how to play, since all you did was press the spacebar to make Flappy Bird jump and avoid pipes. Actually avoiding them, however, proved incredibly hard. Most players couldn't earn more than a handful of points. It didn't help that Nguyen yanked the game almost as soon as it went big. After months of obscurity, an early 2014 review from mega-popular YouTuber PewDiePie propelled Flappy Bird to viral status. Soon everyone was playing the game, and Nguyen was making around $50,000 in revenue per day. That is until Nguyen pulled the game from all app stores in February 2014, citing guilt over the game's highly addictive nature. He's since re-released it in a different form, but it's not the same Flappy Bird that caused millions to pull their hair out trying to reach the end. So what did happen if you beat the game? As it turns out, once you hit 999 points, Flappy meets Super Mario. Trouble is, Mario apparently thinks Flappy is a cheap because he is out for blood. He shoots fireballs at poor Flappy until finally he jumps on his head, killing him instantly like so many Goombas before him. It's kind of a weird idea to put your players through a nigh impossible game only to anticlimactically murder them at the end. That said, it's also kind of funny, not to mention way better than torturing the player with a game over screen like so many simple games before it. If you've never played Pac-Man, you're either in preschool or you're a dirty, filthy liar. From the moment it debuted in 1980, the adventures of a little yellow dot with a ravenous appetite and major haunting issues has been one of the most popular games of all time. This despite the fact that it's essentially the same level over and over again. You run around a maze and eat dots while 4 ghosts chase you. Eat all the dots and you win the level. The only real difference between the levels is that the ghosts get faster every time. By level 21, they're zooming around at a pace that would make even the Roadrunner beep at them to slow down and rest a bit. It's because of that insane speed that few players actually made it to level 255, the final level of the game. The developers were so sure that nobody would do so, in fact, that they never created an ending. So there's no congratulations screen, no story of Pac-Man finally vanquishing the ghosts with the help of his neighbor Exorcist Man, and no scene where Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man dance on the graves of whatever bodies died to create the ghosts. So what happens should you beat level 255? Well, the game actually continues. Kind of. See, in the 8-bit arcade era, systems couldn't handle more than 255 bits of data. If you ever played the original Legend of Zelda and wondered why you couldn't collect more than 255 rupees at a time, that's why. So when you reach level 256 in Pac-Man, the game literally cannot even. The entire right half of the screen glitches out and becomes awash in random code, letters, symbols, numbers, and colors. It's nearly impossible to play at this point unless you've completely memorized the maze and get lucky when avoiding the ghosts, who by this point are faster than a speeding bullet. If you somehow manage to get past level 256, you advance, if you can call it that, to a faster version of level 1. Beat that, and you go to the main screen to start all over again. That'll teach you to get good. Donkey Kong is another early 80s arcade game that became an immediate hit. The story of a giant ape kidnapping a fair damsel named Pauline and a pudgy plumber running and jumping up tower after tower to save her proved popular enough to spawn an entire company's future. Without Donkey Kong, there would be no Mario, and probably no Nintendo. You know your game is great when you release it with a ridiculous name. Seriously, Donkey Kong is clearly not a donkey, and everybody is having too much fun to care. The story only spans 4 levels, which are then repeated with obstacles increasingly becoming faster and harder to avoid. But you can see the ending after just one cycle. Well, one of the endings anyhow. Donkey Kong has 4 endings, but you've likely only seen the one where Mario collapses the tower, Donkey Kong falls to his death, Mario rescues Pauline, and they live happily ever after. At least until he leaves her for Princess Peach. Hey, if you were a workaday plumber probably living paycheck to paycheck, wouldn't you jump at the chance to canoodle with rich royalty? The next two endings are rarer. You can only see them if they're randomly generated, and that doesn't happen often. In Ending 2, Kong falls to his death as before, but squashes Mario in the process. You can even see our plucky plumber's disembodied head beside Kong's lifeless body. Who knew a 1981 arcade game for kids contained a gory scene that would rival anything out of Mortal Kombat? As for poor Pauline, she's left on top of the tower all alone, heartbroken and confused. I like to think she found consolation in Luigi's loving arms shortly thereafter. Then there's Ending 3, the most bizarre one of all. Here, Mario collapses the tower, but Pauline falls to her death. Mario and Donkey Kong lock eyes and a heart appears between them. The implication is that a human and an ape have just fallen in love, which raises all sorts of disturbing questions. What would their dates be like? Do they sire children? Would anyone allow them to adopt? How does Mario explain Pauline's death to the authorities? Better to just move on and discuss the fourth ending, which occurs on level 22. Up until now, the game had been awarding bonus points based on an algorithm that took the level number, multiplied it by 10, and then added 40. Problem is, 22 times 10 plus 40 equals 260, which is higher than the 255 bits of data that the games of the era could handle. The result? Level 22 glitches, and Mario dies seconds after starting up. No barrels or fire hits him, he just mysteriously croaks. Maybe it was a heart attack from all the pasta. Mention Battletoads to any 90s gamer and watch their eyes roll back in horror. That's not because the game was bad, but because it was so insanely difficult that forcing someone to play through it could possibly be considered cruel and unusual punishment. On its surface, the game is basic enough. You play as one of two Battletoads on a mission to rescue Princess Angelica and Toad number 3, Pimple, from the clutches of the evil Dark Queen. What saves it from being Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles but with toads is how it's one of the most frustratingly difficult video games in history. In particular, the wind tunnel level is perhaps the most infamous example of a game being infuriatingly and unnecessarily challenging. Even TMNT's traumatic water bomb level can't compete with Battletoads' controller-destroying challenge. It's no wonder many gamers have never seen the end of the game. However, despite it seeming impossible, you can beat Battletoads, and there is an ending. The final boss is the Dark Queen, who isn't nearly as much of a challenge as the obstacles she's laid out for the Toads. Beat her, and she runs away. She declares that she'll be back, and then she disappears in a tornado of evil. You rescue Pimple and Angelica, return to your ship, declare it's time to party, and then you leave. It's all pretty anticlimactic, especially after all that hair-pulling challenge. They should have at least forced the Queen to race through her own wind tunnel for all eternity as punishment. That'll learn her. Next time you're offline and try to access Google Chrome, hit the spacebar. That T-Rex you see will spring to life and start running. Welcome to the Chrome T-Rex game, proof that you don't need the internet to waste time on the internet. The game's premise is as simple as can be. T-Rex runs and you have to use the spacebar to make him jump over cacti, birds, and other obstacles. Keep it up until you lose. The challenge comes from the game getting increasingly faster as you rack up the points. Once you hit 1,000 points, you're practically screaming across the screen, and you likely won't keep your dinosaur buddy alive much longer. But people just keep trying. Since its launch in 2014, T-Rex game has been played billions of times. By 2018, it was averaging 270 million plays per month. It has proven so addicting, in fact, Google's developers were forced to give companies and schools the option to disable the game. Simply put, too many students and workers were wasting too much time playing it. All this for a game where virtually nobody has even beaten level 1. That's because to do so, you need to amass a whopping 100,000 points. Once you accomplish this nearly impossible task, you get a quick attaboy from Google, and then level 2 begins. This is, of course, provided your spacebar doesn't completely dissolve by that point. As for the ending, nobody knows the ending. That's okay though, because you won't ever see it. This has nothing to do with your gaming abilities and everything to do with how you are not immortal. According to the developers, it would take around 17 million years to make it to the end of T-Rex game. To compare, the T-Rex species only lived for 2 million years before that dang meteor killed them off. Maybe stick with Mario games? The princess might be in another castle, but at least you can make it to the castle.